All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to our webinar today. My name is Justin D'Souza. I'm a quantitative specialist here at Statistics Solutions. Today, we will be discussing SPSS data cleaning and management. So the first steps you should make once you receive your spreadsheet. I have my colleague Isaides today assisting with questions. So if you have any questions during the webinar, you can type them into the chat box and Isaides will be providing responses to those. If we have questions pertaining to the presentation itself, I will be doing a Q&A session at the end. I should mention that everyone that is joining the webinar will receive a copy of today's presentation and a recording of the webinar. So let's go ahead and dive in. So I'll start out by giving a brief overview on the services that our company Statistics Solutions provides, and we will dive into the topic for today about SPSS data management and cleaning. I will actually be going into SPSS to show examples. Then we'll summarize our webinar and we'll conclude with the Q&A session. Our company, Statistics Solutions, provides assistance with every part of the dissertation process, starting with topic development, going through the proposal chapters like the introduction, literature review, and methodology. We assist with both quantitative and qualitative projects. So we do have specialists here that focus on literature review. We have quantitative methodologists who can help you with the methodology and the results. And we have qualitative specialists who can help you with the methodology and results. So if you need help framing research questions and developing your research design or determining what analyses you need to conduct, that's what our methodologists can help you do. We assist with IRB forms, data entry templates. We can host your survey for you on SurveyMonkey. And we help with the latter chapters like the results and discussion. We can help develop PowerPoints for defense, and we can do a mock defense with you. And we assist with journal publications. So if you've hit a roadblock and you're interested in reaching out for some assistance, you can contact us at 727-442-4290. And on our next slide here, I have a list of the webinars.
Hey, Justin.
Yep.
We actually can't see your screen. We only see your desktop.
Oh, really? I thought I share this one. Let me just double check it.
Looks great.
Now you can see it?
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, Isaides. All right. So yeah, let me just briefly go back through this. So on this slide, I provided all the different parts of the dissertation that we do assist with. So in bullet point format, you can see everything that we do help with. And it's not even limited to these components. There are more specifics that we can assist with. So if you do have a question, please give us a call. You'll see the number at the bottom of every slide. Okay, and on this slide, I have a list of the webinar archives. So you can view past webinars that we have done, which encompass different chapters of the dissertation. So if you've hit a roadblock in a certain part, maybe you need help with the literature review, check out our webinar archive, and we've done numerous webinars on the literature review, for example. And then on the top link here will give you a list of future webinars that we will be conducting. Okay, so for today's topic, we're talking about cleaning SPSS data and getting it ready for analysis. So the first thing you want to do is extract your data, whether you're using SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics or you're entering your data manually. You can enter your data into SPSS just like you would an Excel file. And the first thing you want to do is add an ID variable so you can easily identify the participants in your sample. The reason for this is so you can keep a running record of who you may be deleting. You have a consistent ID number for every person. And it's usually, you want to do it in ascending order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 100. So if for whatever reason you change the order of your spreadsheet, you can just sort that column in ascending order, and that will revert the spreadsheet back to its original format. Then you want to name all the variables that you'll be using in your spreadsheet. So if you're using a previously validated survey, like the JSS for job satisfaction or the MLQ for leadership, you want to identify and name every item using no spaces. SPSS is very finicky about having spaces, but just put it together as one phrase like this: job satisfaction, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And you can quickly do that in Excel by auto-filling a numeric system. Then you want to save your spreadsheet after every major adjustment. So we will be doing this today. I'll show you an example. After you do any adjustment that changes the spreadsheet, changes the sample size, you want to save. So then you can go back to any step in the process if you need to. Okay, so here I have a sample spreadsheet that was extracted from SurveyMonkey, and this is how I received the data. Okay, so the purpose of this survey was to measure 3 components. We have 7 items here that measure leadership effectiveness. We have 6 items here that measure employee satisfaction. And we have 5 items that measure organizational performance. So the first thing I want to do is just take an eyeball at the data that we have in the spreadsheet. And I want to keep an eye out for how are things coded. Are they numeric? Are they words? Looks like we have a hybrid of the two. Okay, and then I want to look for missing responses. Do I have any? Yes, looks like someone missed all this data here. We have some participants who missed data in the middle. These people missed everything altogether. Okay. So what we want to do, the first thing on my list was to create an ID column. So take a look at how many participants you have here. Looks like we have 91 participants. So I'm going into Excel, and for some reason, there is not a quick way to do this in SPSS. There absolutely should be, but I'm going to start a list. And then use this drop-down arrow. The drop-down at the bottom right, there's a pull button. So I'm going to drag it down to 91. Okay, so I'm going to add a column here, right-click, insert variable. Now everybody has an ID number. Call it ID. Now I want to name the variables of interest. So this person did have one demographic question that asked about years of service. All that years of service. Remember, you can't have spaces in between. It needs to be one phrase. Now for the other components, have leadership effectiveness. I'll drag that down to 6. So this works the same way. You can just start the phrase and then drag down. I believe you just need to do the first 2. There were 6 for this one. There were 7 actually for leadership effectiveness. And we have 5 for this one. Okay, so this is where I'll do a split screen to have SPSS open along with Excel. And I'm copying these 7 and the 6 items for employee satisfaction and 5 for organizational performance. And now I'm going to save. Okay, so I'm going to save it with the sample size specifically in today's date. Just save it in the same folder over and over. Put 525 n equals 91. Okay. Step 1, 2, and 3 are now complete. Now we want to recode our Likert scale items from string format, which means words or symbols, and convert that to numeric format. We want to identify whether any items on the survey need to be reverse scored. So you'll definitely want to look at scoring instructions. If you're using a previously validated survey, there should be a scoring key that accompanies the survey, or perhaps you want to reach out to the authors of the tool and just double check. You may want to look, if you can't easily find them, you can oftentimes go to LinkedIn and see if they have a LinkedIn profile and email them or message them to see if they have scoring instructions for their survey. Sometimes you take an average of the items, other times you take a sum. That's usually the most common procedure, but they will identify if items need to be reverse scored. And so as I come back into here, it looks like a lot of the data is already in numeric format. So we're good with these, but we have organizational performance where we have it in string format. We need to convert this to numbers instead. Okay, so a quick way to do that, I'm going to go into transform, recode into same variables, and I'm going to move all 5 of these organizational performance items into this box. Now we need to define the new values to swap with the words here. Okay, so I'm going to old and new values. On this survey, strongly disagree corresponds to a 1. Disagree is a 2. So I'm putting the old value here and the new value up here, then clicking add. We have a neutral response, which is 3. Four for agree, and strongly agree for 5. So something that's rather important here, a step I'm doing is I'm clicking continue and I'm going into the actual spreadsheet and copying the value into here. I'm not typing it out because you don't know if there are spaces after this. There could be 5 spaces after agree, and that's just the way SurveyMonkey may have collected it. So if you were to run it without those spaces, it's not going to replace a 4 with agree. It needs to have a specific number of spaces preceding and following the words. So we have that ready to go. We can click OK. I'm going to click paste for this example to illustrate what syntax is. So syntax, I just click paste on that. Syntax is keeping a running record of all the analyses that you are doing. So we can see this syntax is telling us we are recoding a variable into numbers. And this is good. It's kind of giving a summary of everything you're doing. Not only that, it allows someone else to replicate all the analyses that you are conducting. If they wanted to start from scratch and do the same procedures, they can use this syntax file. Okay, so to use syntax, you just highlight the code that we just pasted and you click this green arrow. And just like that, it's changed everything to numeric. Okay. Right now, you can see this little symbol. It has 2 dots and an A. SPSS still thinks that this is string format or words. We need to tell it that it is numeric. For it to be numeric, it should have this ruler symbol right here, like it does for the other variables. I'm going to go into variable view, just change all of these to numeric. So I did 1, and then you can copy and paste all the way down. The second component to look for at this step is reverse scoring. So the way that you can identify that is if you're using the same Likert scale with items, but the phrasing of the actual items is negative or positive. So if some items are phrased negatively and some are phrased positively, you typically need to do reverse scoring. But just to be certain, I would recommend reaching out to the authors or finding the scoring instructions. So what we can see here in employee satisfaction, there are 6 survey items, and we have a mix of items that are negatively phrased. We have, I am not satisfied with my job security, and we have positively phrased items. Overall, I am satisfied with my job. This is an indication that we probably need to reverse score. And the way we want it is so higher scores are more indicative of employee satisfaction. So if we look at the Likert scale now, a 1 is a strongly agree and a 5 is a strongly disagree. Typically, you'll see it the reverse way. You'll see a 5 being the positive trait and a 1 being the negative. So for anything that's phrased positively, we want a 5 to be strongly agree and a 1 to be strongly disagree. Such as this item here, I am paid fairly, or overall, I am satisfied with my job. If we want higher scores to be higher employee satisfaction, we want a 5 to be strongly agree for these items. Okay, so there are 4 items in total. I'm highlighting them right now. These 4 are positively phrased items for job satisfaction. So we do need to reverse score these. To do that, I'm going to do the same procedure. I'm going to recode into different variables. Instead of same, I'm doing the different variable option. Because I want to retain these 4 items in the original format, okay, you do actually the exact same thing as we did with organizational performance. I'm going to put 1, 3, 5, and 6 in this box here. We then need to give the new variable a name. So I'm going to call it employee satisfaction 1 reverse and change. So that will be the new variable name. Now I'm just copying and pasting for the other ones and changing the number. Okay, so just double check what your Likert scale was. It goes from 1 to 5. So I'm going into old and new values. A 1 is going to become a 5. A 2 will be a 4. 3 stays the same. You don't even have to do that step, but I like to see it visually. 4 is going to become a 2, and a 5 is a 1. So you should have a ladder going up and a ladder going down, which is what we have. We'll click continue and paste. So now we have the code for this, for reverse coding job satisfaction. Okay, so I'll highlight that code, click this green arrow. Now we have 4 new variables that are reverse scored. Okay, so I'll put them in order up here. and take out the old ones. Put them at the bottom. Okay, perfect. So we just did some more data management. I think it's good to save again. And just specify what steps you made. The next step is handling missing data. So you want to first check your power analysis, typically in your methodology. If you're dealing with statistics that are using inferential analyses like correlations, ANOVAs, regressions, or t-tests, you have to do a power analysis to determine your minimum sample size requirement. So if you're far above the sample size requirement, then I would consider deleting people that missed any responses. There's a lot of different ways to handle it depending on what reference you read. But if you are leaps and bounds above your sample size requirement, I think it's okay to just delete cases completely that missed an item. You want a full spreadsheet. That should be the goal. But if you're kind of hovering around the power analysis calculation, or you're even below it, then you might want to consider using imputation or mean imputation or predictive imputation. So mean imputation is replacing missing values with the average of the columns. Or you can use predictive imputation to predict missing responses. The latter option here is much more complicated, but there are some detailed instructions on SPSS to do this. If you just Google search this or look up YouTube videos, it is quite an advanced procedure. So for the purpose of today's webinar, I'll show you how to take the average as a replacement. Okay, first we need to just take a look and figure out who are we retaining. Okay, so people who missed the entire survey, all the Likert scale questions, I would take these out. That is my typical plan of approach. But if someone missed an item here and there, like just one item in the whole survey, like this or this, then I would use imputation, mean imputation, to account for those responses. So let's sort a column in ascending order, and that's going to quickly show the missing responses, people who missed everything here. Okay, so I'll take these ones out. Just highlight the rows, right click, and click clear. And everybody else looks like they either responded fully or just missed a response here and there. So for these remaining ones, I'll do imputation. Before I do that, I'm going to save. So let's save it, and we'll update the sample size. So we have 86 now. And this is removing full responses. Say full incompletions. Okay, so a quick way to do mean imputation is coming to transform and replace missing values. Instead of searching for every single case that is missing, I'm just going to throw everything in there. And if there is a missing value, it's going to replace it in a new variable. So I'm going to start with leadership effectiveness and go down to organizational performance. These last 4 items are the reverse coded employee satisfaction, the original ones, so I'm not including those. Okay, so you can see that it's doing a series mean to replace missing values. So I'm going to click paste, and paste has now put the syntax here. And you can even put notes in syntax if you use the asterisk symbol that starts a note. So I could just say replacing missing values average, period. So then you can kind of tell a story to the next participant about what you are doing step by step. So let's highlight all this code and click run. Now we have everything with a 1 after it, underscore 1. It's replaced the missing value with the average. And you'll see instead of what the actual variable was, this is the original one. It now says series mean leadership effectiveness 1. So as we look in data view, there should be no missing values in this spreadsheet anymore for these imputed values. Everything should have been replaced. That does appear to be the case. Okay, so we'll save again. The next step you want to do is follow the scoring instructions on your survey. So I did mention that before when it came to reverse coding items. You'll see instructions, and 99% of the time, you are either taking a mean or a sum of the items in the surveys to make a composite score. So for instance, we had leadership effectiveness. We had 7 items on that survey. The goal typically is not to look at each item on its own. It's to look at a collective measurement for leadership effectiveness, a collective measurement for employee satisfaction. You want to take the average or a sum of all the items to represent those constructs. After doing that, you want to remove outliers. You don't want influential values in there to skew your data set. So you want to account for outliers. And then you want to test for reliability with Convex Alpha. And so I'll show you those 3 procedures. Okay. So first we'll do the composite scores. So you want to go to transform and compute variable. You need to give the variable a name. So we'll do leadership effectiveness first. I'm going to put underscore overall. This is the overall measurement. We're going to take a mean for this example. Start right here. Don't use the imputed or the non-imputed values. You need to come to the bottom. And just for the sake of not confusing everyone, I'm going to delete the original variables up here. Let's get rid of these, just so we have the imputed data set. That's all we need. I'll save again, just to specify that. Okay, so we'll take a mean of all the items in leadership effectiveness. Now you can use a comma and put every item in here like this, which isn't so bad when you have 7 items, but sometimes a scale has 100 items plus. A quick way to do it is just put the word to after including the first case and include the last case like this. We're taking a mean of the leadership effective items from 1 to 7. Paste, and go ahead and do the other ones. And this button right here is that I should have mentioned this before. This is a really useful button that it recalls your previously used commands. So instead of going transform, and sometimes you have to go down a long list. You go to non-parametrics here. I'm going down 3 arrows to select an analysis, but if you use this drop-down arrow, it brings up your most recently used commands. So that's a quick way to repeat a procedure. All right, so we have the syntax here for those variables. I like to use hyphens between different steps, just like this. So I created a comment and I'm using dashed arrows. So these first 2 steps were recoding, and then we did replacing missing values. Now we're getting to creating composite scores. And putting notes is pretty useful for other people. So I'll put a note here saying computing composite scores. So we'll go ahead and run this code. Now we have 3 variables. These are composite scores for the variables of interest. So you can see that we have decimals as possibilities. So these are typically considered continuous variables now because they fall on a continuum. They aren't ordinal anymore. There is a lot of debate and statistics about this, but we don't have just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as possibilities because we have decimals. I support the argument that these are now scale or continuous measurements. The next thing to check are outliers. Are any of these values extreme cases? The way to do this is go to transform, or I'm sorry, we'll go to analyze descriptive statistics and descriptives. And there are many ways to check for outliers. You can check for it visually using box plots, or you can check for it statistically using z-scores. Okay, so I'm moving the 3 variables to this right box, and I'm check marking save standardized values as variables. So what this is going to do is create 3 new variables that are z-scores. So these are standardized values for each of these measurements. So we have leadership effectiveness, and we have the z-scores for leadership effectiveness, whereas the average is around 0. And according to this citation that I used by Tabachnik Fidel, very reputable duo that writes about statistics, I cite them all the time. They say that z-scores or standard deviations exceeding 3.29 standard deviations are outliers. So positive 3.29 or negative 3.29. So if we sort these in ascending and descending order, we can identify these. I'm going to right click here, sort in ascending order. You can see the values, and this does not reach negative 3.29. So we have no low outliers for leadership effectiveness. Then I sort in descending order. This is the highest z-score. So this is not at 3.29 or greater. Okay, so then we just do the same thing. Employee satisfaction, this one's pretty close, negative 3.24, not quite at that threshold. Descending, no outliers either way. So it looks like we have no outliers. Great. So at this stage, I would call this the final spreadsheet because we have accounted for missing responses. We've computed all the scores and we've identified there are no outliers. So we are not going smaller than 86 here. 86 is our final. Okay, the next thing was to check for reliability or internal consistency. To do that, we are going into analyze and scale and reliability analysis. Cronbach alpha is what we are doing here, and Cronbach alpha gives you a measure of how consistent participants are in responding to your survey. So essentially, the higher that value, the better. And let's see if so test for reliability with Cronbach's alpha. I should have included a citation here, but typically you look for values greater than 0.70. That means you have acceptable internal consistency. And that just means that if someone is saying, I agree, or I strongly agree on a survey item, they are, for the rest of the survey, the participants are generally agreeable. So they aren't jumping around. It kind of shows that they are reading the questions properly and they are interpreting them accurately. So they aren't jumping around and Christmas treeing the survey, which is a term for just meaning they are not reading it. They're just responding quickly to get through it. So that's what we're doing here. We're checking to see do we have consistency in responses. So really easy, you just put in these 7 items here, leadership effectiveness, give it a name. I think it's a really good habit just to click the paste button every time. So you keep a running record of what you're doing. Okay, so after clicking paste, you'll see all the syntax. This is the syntax for reliability. So I'm highlighting all this code and clicking the green arrow, and we can check the internal consistency of this measure. Okay, so leadership effectiveness was 0.97. So that shows that we have good reliability for these different measures. Okay. So after that, you have a final spreadsheet, and at this stage, you would use descriptive statistics to summarize your demographics. That's typically how you start a results chapter, is give a description of gender, ethnicity, race, age, things like that. Then you want to test for the assumptions of your analysis that you've proposed. Okay, so you have assumptions of normality, you have homogeneity of variance. If you're doing regressions, you have multicollinearity issues. You have to check for those things before running your actual inferential analysis. And that concludes our webinar for today. So thanks for joining us. Our company assists with every part of the dissertation. If you've hit a roadblock, please contact us at info@statisticsolutions.com or give us a call at 727-442-4290. I'll go ahead and open the panel to questions if we have any. So you can type those into the Q&A box, or you can type them into the chat box. And it looks like Isades has put the links for previous webinars and scheduling a meeting with Janine, in which you can discuss where you are in the process and where you need help. Do we have any questions? Yes, hi Janie. We are going to send everyone a copy of the PowerPoint and the recording, most likely tomorrow. Yep, sure thing. Good, I'm glad it was helpful. So yeah, check out the other webinars we will be conducting in the near future. I will be doing another one on Thursday, I believe, about power analysis, which is something I did mention today. Yes, if you need help just running analyses, we do assist with that chapter specifically. Typically, that's chapter 4, which is the results chapter. It really depends on what university you go to. But if you do need help with running analyses and you have a data analysis plan, yeah, we can help you run those stats. Isades just included the link for dissertation consulting. Okay, do we have any additional questions? I'll stay on for a few more minutes if we have any other questions. Here's a list of the upcoming webinars that we will be conducting. Okay, so it looks like we have 2 more quantitative webinars this week. My colleague David will be assisting with those. Looks like the one tomorrow is about the methodology chapter, in which he will give a overview of what is required in that chapter. And then likewise for the results chapter, he'll talk about the essentials that you need for quantitative results chapter. My colleague Tom will be doing a chapter 1 webinar on Thursday, and I will be doing a power analysis webinar. So if you need help figuring out how to calculate your sample size, that's what we will be discussing on Thursday at the same time as today. All right, any final questions? You're welcome. Thanks for joining. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the webinar today. Again, if you have any questions, please contact us at the email provided here. We will be sending you a copy of the presentation. You can also give us a call at the number provided and come join us for the future webinars. Have a great evening.